In today's video, I want to discuss a proposed three-team trade involving the Senators, Blues, and Flyers that I think makes a ton of sense for all parties involved. We also have some updates on Jonathan Toews, the Calgary Flames, Patrick Marleau returns to San Jose, we have a signing in New Jersey, and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here, Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of news to cover here today. Let's kick things off with a couple of signings. First up, we have a signing in New Jersey. They've come to terms with pending UFA forward Jerard Haula, who returns to the Devils on a new 3-year contract. His 3-year contract total value is $9.4 million, giving him an average annual value of $3.15. They've also given him a full no-move clause in years 1 and 2 of the contract and a modified no trade in year number 3. Now, Haula had a good season for New Jersey. I knew there was a lot of interest between the player and the team for him to return and to get something done. So based on his age, performance, I have no issue at all with the contract. I think it's a pretty fair deal. Should work out well for New Jersey. I know they were a big fan of how he fit in there. I don't like the idea that they give him a full no-move clause in years 1 and 2. I really think teams hand these out and handcuff themselves way too easily. I honestly think that should be reserved for more elite-level players. And as much as I like Jerard Haula as a player, he is not that. But like I said, good contract. I just don't know why they would put that clause in there for the next couple of years. If something changes, performance isn't there, or something else happens with the team that they need to make a move, they've kind of just put themselves the handcuffs on that they can't move him now. So don't like that part of it. But otherwise, the money in term and everything looks pretty good and good deal otherwise. The Columbus Blue Jackets have signed Carson Meyer. He gets a 1-year, 2-way contract as well to remain with the Blue Jackets. We also had a couple of former players getting hired in their old stomping grounds. The San Jose Sharks have brought back longtime NHL veteran and all-time games played leader Patrick Marleau. Marleau is now going to be rejoining the Sharks as a player development coach and a hockey operations advisor. So this is a great deal. Obviously, Marleau is a longtime veteran, one of the all-time greatest Sharks. Accomplished a lot in his career. The only thing that's missing really on his resume is a Stanley Cup. Otherwise, he was a phenomenal player, a great skater, which allowed him to play so late into his career. He'll be able to offer a lot, I think, to a lot of the new, younger Sharks players that he'll work with in the development side of things. And of course, being a longtime veteran can get a taste for what other types of mentor roles are like, being a hockey operations advisor. Perhaps right now he might have, long-term aspirations to maybe get into more of a management type role. And this will allow him to kind of, learn on the job, so to speak, and be a little bit a part of that to see if that's something he'll enter on. So overall, he's such a good, player for them and was such a big part of that organization for so long. It's just nice to see him more, officially involved. I know he was already around the team a little bit and stuff in the past year, but just having a more official title and to be a part of it. Certainly, it's huge for the organization to keep their top alumni around like that. The Calgary Flames have completed the filling out of their coaching staff, hiring former NHL player and former OHL head coach Marc Savard. Savard had tour duty in the NHL with a variety of teams, had a solid NHL career. Unfortunately for Savard, his career was cut short due to concussions. He was one of the game's top offensive players, top playmaker, great passer. Recently had a little bit of experience after returning to the game. Obviously had some time off after retiring. He did work for 1 season as an assistant coach with the St. Louis Blues. Then he went back to the Ontario Hockey League and coached the Windsor Spitfires as a head coach for 2 seasons and had tremendous success there. And this has allowed him to get a new opportunity to get back to the NHL. So he joins, Ryan Huska and the staff in Calgary. Having his offensive mind on the bench is going to be a huge help. I really think this move will probably benefit nobody more than Jonathan Huberdeau. Jonathan Huberdeau is a very similar type player to Marc Savard. I can imagine he'll relate extremely well to him, and it can hopefully help unlock some of those talents that allowed him to be so successful for so long in the Florida Panthers organization. Can allow him to find his game a little bit and to hopefully regain that 100-point form, or at least close to it, that he was putting up before he came to Calgary. So certainly, I think it's a great addition. I really like Savard as a player. I think he's a terrific coach, and he's a great addition for what they need as well. Should be able to help their power play as well, work with the forwards and be a great help on the offense. I know the Flames are a team we're going to talk a little bit about more later. Lots of turmoil there in Calgary. As much as they've been adding on the coaching staff and, all these new additions, a lot of the players don't want to stay. And we're going to see probably a very different looking Calgary Flame team by the time we get to the fall. But, interesting to see how everything plays out. Some other news from around the league. Apparently MSE, which is the parent company that's owned by Ted Leonsis, who owns the Washington Capitals, as well as the NBA's Washington Wizards, apparently are threatening to relocate out of D.C. over to Arlington, Virginia, over funding for renovations to the Capital One Arena. They've apparently put $70 million of privately funded renovations have already been completed since 2018, and they certainly would like to have a lot more work done and would like some help from the local municipality there to help pay for all of it, or some of it, obviously. Now, of course, for them to move and relocate, I think this is probably just a threat, a negotiation ploy, you could call it. To be honest, they do have a long-term lease there, and it would end up costing them about $35 million, I believe, to bring to lease based on what I was reading on this information. Of course, Arlington, Virginia is not all that far. Of course, the Capitals at one point did play technically in the state of Maryland. Based on the geography of the area between D.C., Maryland, Virginia, they're all in very, very close proximity. It wouldn't be all that far to go. So, I know some people might hear the word relocation and kind of panic and think it'd be a different team, but no, it really wouldn't mean anything. It would still be the Washington Capitals. There'd be no change. Just the arena would theoretically be in a different state that's extremely close, neighboring like that. So, ultimately, we'll see what happens. I don't really think this is something that's bound to play out. It's a negotiating ploy, but, at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. The Capitals, long-term, either need a new arena or, need to get these renovations done according to what I was reading here with the reports on this today. So we'll see how everything plays out. Some UFA rumors to take a look at. The Carolina Hurricanes and captain Jordan Staal apparently at an impasse, according to TSN's Darren Dreger. Now, this is a contract that everybody expected to get done sometime really over the course of the past 10 to 12 months. We knew entering the beginning of last offseason that, of course, Staal would be in the final year of his contract. Both the team and the player have said all the right things that they want to bring him back. He wants to stay. Neither real side ever really seemed too worried about it. I know whenever Jordan Staal was asked about his contract, he's like, yeah, I'm not going to worry about it. We'll get it done. I have every intention on staying. And I do believe that, both sides do legit want to get it done, but they seem to be far apart when it comes to money. Now, we know how the Carolina Hurricanes operate ever since they've had the ownership change and Tom Dunn's been leading things. They've had a different approach to handling contract negotiations, and it's not entirely bad, to be completely honest. Essentially, they determine what they feel the player's value to be. They'll offer that in the form of a contract for X number of years, and they basically give you a take it or leave it approach. There's not a ton of back and forth in negotiating. They feel like, you're worth this much. That's what we're going to give you. And if you don't want it, or you think you're worth more, then you go ahead and try to find it. And if you want to circle back to us, fine. If you find more money elsewhere, that's fine too. They are not willing to overpay players. Now, of course, we don't know exactly what Jordan Staal was asking for. I would hope that, considering the contract that he just finished, it was paying him a hefty amount for what he brings to the team and the amount of offense he puts up. So I would like to think that everybody would be rational enough to know that he would obviously be taking a pay cut. He'd be making less money at this stage of his career. But what exactly, how much less, what is he willing to accept? But we don't know any of those numbers. So, even though this has been long and expected to get done, we're only, a short period of time away now from it not getting done and him hitting the market as a UFA. So right now, things are trending to the fact that he might hit the market. It may be gone from Carolina, but they still have some time left. We'll see what happens. Jonathan Toews, another UFA to watch. Of course, for the first time in his career, will be leaving the Chicago Blackhawks. But is he going to leave and play for another team, or is he going to leave and not play and retire? We don't know. His agent, Pat Brisson, cautioned everybody that he will likely not be a July 1st signing this year. When free agency opens on the first day, July 1, very, very likely that we're not going to hear a deal reached for Jonathan Toews in a new team. That he's likely going to continue to take a little bit of time, reflect and make a decision on what he wants. Now, it's not going to stop teams from picking up the phone and making an offer, but even if they do that, they're likely not going to get a response at that point from Jonathan Toews. There's already been reports from a number of NHL reporters and insiders saying that there is a lot of interest. Of course, teams would probably love to get an opportunity for Toews to play a smaller role, lower in the lineup for less money. They feel like that could be really good value, I'm sure. Whether or not he had agreed to that, we don't know any of those things. But, certainly, I think it's an enticing thought to think you can get a former captain, former 3-time Stanley Cup champion for, with all that experience on your team to play maybe third line role, for, a much cheaper contract than he's ever earned in his career. But, will he do it? Will he want to? Does he feel his body's up to it? There's lots of questions he's still trying to answer to himself, and we don't fully know. But I know there was rumors about Edmonton being very, very interested before. I know his hometown Winnipeg Jets reported that was quite a while ago. A lot's changed in Winnipeg since then, but they're definitely, by the sounds of things, probably going to have some openings. But I'm not sure how good of a team they're going to be next year. They're going to have a lot of change, and we don't know how that's going to go yet. So he may not be, we don't know what he wants, right? Does he really want to focus on winning? Does he just want to try to be healthy and play, have fun? We don't know what he wants. But at the end of the day, Jonathan Toews has a lot of interest from different teams, but it's going to be one of those drawn-out situations. Hopefully it doesn't take as long as Nazem Kadri did last year. That was a contract that really, really drug on, and it seemed like there were several weeks through the summer we were just waiting for the Kadri news, and it just never came. So hopefully it's not anything like that, but he'll take his time. And then speaking of Calgary, we got more news on the Flames. Of course, we've talked a bit about in the last couple of days where it just seems like everybody wants out of Calgary all of a sudden. We already knew Noah Hanifin had told the team that he wasn't intending to re-sign. More information on that's resurfaced that he does not want to play in Canada. He wants to head back to the United States. He wants to be closer to home, or at least in his home country. So we don't know where he's going to end up. As I mentioned before, the Florida Panthers make a ton of sense for Hanifin. Could they work out a deal? I think it's possible. The Boston Bruins have loved this player forever and a day since the draft, when he was drafted. Wouldn't be shocking if the Bruins maybe pull off a deal. They also need help at center if Bergeron and Krejci don't come back. As I talked about a few days ago, I wouldn't be shocked. I think Calgary and Boston make good trade partners too. So that wouldn't be overly shocking. Either way, Hanifin wants to go to a U.S.-based team. We do know that. So you can eliminate any rumors from him going to the Canucks or the Leafs or anybody else north of the border. Of course, we know Elias Lindholm has indicated his reluctance to sign a contract extension, but the Flames have pushed probably harder with him than anybody else to try to get a deal done. And Craig Conroy, when he took the GM job, did say that was going to be a top priority for him, was to talk to Lindholm and to see if he could sign him to a long-term extension to stay. That's not looking promising right now. All we know is that he apparently made what they felt to be a real solid offer. We know that Lindholm's likely looking for a deal comparable to like a Bo Horvat. Something around that $8.5 million range. Maybe more. I wouldn't think too much more than that would be really reasonable for him. But, they can do an 8x8, 8x8.5. That's somewhere around the ballpark, likely what he's looking for. And he has not responded to them, and he's willing to accept that. Seems like he's going to think about it, but they're not feeling optimistic at this point. And then since then, we've learned that Michael Backlund, even though he's the longest tenured Flame, he has apparently been offered the captaincy if he wants to sign a return. And he's still leaning towards heading to market and not returning. And then we learned about Tyler Toffoli, of course, who not only is he told him that he's not going to re-sign, it sounds from what we've heard from Frank Cervalli and a few others that he's also made it known that he would prefer to be traded and just to move on the summer. And he, I guess, can consider doing an extension with his new team if that works out. So Tyler Toffoli, not only is he unlikely to stay, he's pretty likely to get dealt. So we could possibly see all of these guys traded. It's hard to say. Conroy made it known he's not going to let players go into their final year and risk having another situation happen like it did with Johnny Gaudreau. So to me, we're going to probably see a lot of activity here with the Calgary Flames. I mean, the other players, like Lucic, for example, he's at UFA. He's not going back to Calgary. So we could see significant change. We know Danny Vladar, another guy, likely going to get moved to make room for Dustin Wolf. So it's going to be a very different looking team. And Elliot Friedman on his podcast today was saying that from what he's heard, it sounds like maybe it might be best for the Flames to make a lot of changes That it sounds like from what he's hearing, there's a lot of reports saying that the Flames did not, as a group, did not get along overly well last year, and that there were some locker room issues. So, not to say who exactly is, if there's one, kind of small group or individual causing trouble. We don't know any of that. It may not necessarily be the case. Not everybody gets along famously. Not everybody gels to be best buddies. So, obviously they had a little bit of change in last year's team, but this apparently sounds like it's not necessarily something that just picked up last year. I think it's just a case of the team likely needing some change. And if you don't have a great group dynamic, then, you need to make some changes. You need that team to really buy in and to really want to be part of the group and to love being a part of it and to really care for their teammates. It really makes all the difference in the world when it comes to trying to fight together and win together. And if they don't have that, changes are definitely going to be needed. So we'll see, but that could be a big problem in Calgary. It's a shame what's going on. It's going to be tough for the new GM to handle, for sure. Now, as I mentioned, I want to talk about a 3-team potential trade between the Flyers, the Blues, and the Ottawa Senators. Now, I first came across this from one of the writers with the Hockey News. It's just a trade proposal, just a suggestion. Of course, we know a couple of the main pieces of this have been mentioned heavily in the rumor mill and are very likely to get moved. And I think this trade makes a ton of sense. So essentially how this would work is you would have the Ottawa Senators getting Travis Konecny out of Philadelphia. The St. Louis Blues would get Alex DeBrincat out of Ottawa. And then, of course, the Flyers here would get a combination of multiple first-round picks and prospects. So the way they put it, there was 2 first-rounders and a prospect, which I thought the main prospect would make a lot of sense from Ottawa, would be former first-round pick Tyler Boucher. Lots of ties to the Flyers organization. Of course, his dad, Brian Boucher, longtime former Flyer goalie. I believe he spent some time growing up in the area as well. Probably would be interesting to him. And given how much deeper the Senators' forward group has become in the last couple of years, it would create a much better opportunity for him to get to the NHL, playing on a team like the Flyers, who would be able to allow more opportunity. But Boucher, he still needs some work, yes, but you know what? He could play the style of game that they want in Philly. He's certainly not afraid of a very physical, rough style of game. So to me, he fits the DNA and the culture of that team perfectly, and could be a great piece. Now, of course, he would only be one piece of the puzzle. So the first-round picks can be a combination of things. We know that the Blues have 3 first-rounders. 2 of them are fairly late in the first round. Maybe they offer those 2 late first-rounders to Ottawa for DeBrincat, because we know the Senators spent a first, a second, and a third, and they would like to probably get something close to that. 2 late first is probably close enough. I mean, it's not exact, but something along those lines. And then essentially they flip those picks to Philly for Konecny. Of course, like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be just Tyler Boucher. Maybe there's a defenseman like a Lassie Thompson in there. You can get a multiple prospects, multiple picks. Philly gets a good haul in return for Konecny. And then obviously that gets flipped, between Ottawa and St. Louis as well, getting DeBrincat over to the Blues. So I like this deal. Like, you get St. Louis, we know wants more scoring. We know they want this kind of player. I believe St. Louis is a team that DeBrincat would be more interested in signing with long term. Konecny has connections to the Senators. Of course, he's an Ontario-born player, so it's not far from home. He played his junior hockey for the Ottawa 67, so he's used to playing and living in the Ottawa area. Of course, his old teammate and former captain, Claude Giroux, is now there, so they would have that personal connection with a former teammate. There's obviously, and I'm sure in a case like that Pierre Dorion will likely rely heavily on Giroux for his advice in making this kind of acquisition for one of his forward teammates. So obviously, there's lots to like there in the connection between Konecny and the Sens. DeBrincat gets to go to an American-based team where he's more likely to sign. The Blues are very much in the mix for this type of trade. They've been linked to both of these players. DeBrincat could be a good fit in St. Louis. Philly gets a good haul of future assets for their rebuild, and I think everybody wins here. At the same time, you get 3 teams in 3 separate divisions, so you don't have to have any. Some teams are concerned about making the division rival stronger or conference rival stronger. You don't really have that. You have Philly, who's rebuilding. They're not worried about making anybody stronger right now. And then the Blues and Senators are completely different divisions, completely different conferences. And I think this is a win-win-win for everybody. Now, I think to some degree, the prospects could be negotiated. I personally thought prospects like Tyler Boucher or Lassie Thompson make sense. mean, if they can get a good prospect and a couple of first-round picks out of Konechny, even though they're late first-rounders, that's a really good haul. I don't think Philly can really do much better than that. I mean, I know that the rumors we've heard about them, what they've been asking for guys like Scott Laughton and stuff, they're probably asking for a lot right now, but by the end of the day, before they're willing to make a deal, they probably are going to have the prices come down a little bit and come back down to earth and get a deal done. I mean, to me, this makes a lot of sense. So let me know what you think. Do you think this deal makes sense for all parties involved? Can you really think that there's one team here that wins the most? I don't think so. I think this is a pretty even deal. In that long term, they can all win. DeBrincat might fit well with the Blues and their system. Konechny can certainly play well. He can be a pest to play against and be a physical guy, even though he's not a huge player. I think he can fit well with guys like Brady Tkachuk and Giroux and all these other guys they have there. Tim Stützle, Josh Norris, etc. I think he could be a great fit. DeBrincat's a good fit. Philly gets lots. It's a win-win-win. So let me know what you think down in the comments. And should we tell these teams to go ahead and make this deal? And we'll talk about it further in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.